Hello, everybody. Bethany Dotson, relationship coach and trauma-sensitive somatic therapist for single, high-achieving women over the age of 40 who are struggling to recover fully from a narcissistic relationship or a unfulfilling marriage or divorce, rather, and who are likely struggling to date again or trust themselves to date. And I want to talk about today the thought process or the inner dialogue that you may have right now or have entertained in the past, which is, how can I get back to the old me? How can I go back to the way that I used to be? Because I like that version of me a lot better than what I am living in right now. And this will especially be for you if it's been several months or several years since leaving your ex and you have done all of the right things. You have gone to therapy, you have learned A to Z, all the symptoms of a narcissist and what to expect in an abusive relationship and how to spot red flags on date number one. You've soared in your career, you've made new friends, you've reconnected with old friends. You've done everything imaginable to revitalize yourself and rebuild your identity after this destructive relationship. But now here you are, and there's still a sense in you that something feels off, something feels missing. You've done a lot of EMDR, you've done a lot of therapy, but you're still dating men who can't commit. You're still getting swept up in intense chemistry. You're still making the same choices that you used to make that led you into unfulfilling relationships. And probably right now, having the same lack of trust that you've had as you had in your marriage or relationship. So what often happens when women arrive or find themselves in this place of stuckness, even though they've done all of the right things to heal and move on after leaving an abusive relationship, is that they will look in the rearview mirror and romanticize the past. And this can even look like looking in the rearview mirror and romanticizing her ex as putting blinders on around all the red flags. This is very common. I want to talk about why this happens and how you can get out of that pattern, because the question that I want you to switch from is not how can I get back to the way that I used to be, but how can I become an even better version of myself and the best version of me possible. And that version of you that you're becoming will be the version that attracts a better relationship than you've ever experienced before. So the first reason, the main reason that you find yourself longing for the past or asking yourself, how can I get back to what I used to be? You're sitting in the present moment, but you're like, man, 14 years ago when I was, single and before I met my ex, I was this, I was that. How can I get back to that? When you find yourself like this, what you're doing is creating a sense of safety especially if you're over the age of 40, especially if you feel this pervasive sense of stuckness. When you leave a bad marriage, a bad relationship, the number one thing that you're going to be faced with is this overwhelming, daunting sense of uncertainty. Who am I? What do I like? I don't even know what I like anymore. What do I want? I don't know what I want anymore. I focused on my kids. I focused on my husband. I focused on my career all this time. So there's this big gaping hole of uncertainty. And when we feel uncertain, and I just invite you to step back for a moment and look at this on a macro level in terms of what's going on in the world right now. When we feel uncertain, we feel afraid, we feel under pressure, we feel stressed. And what we often do when we feel stressed, it's an uncomfortable feeling. When we feel uncertain and fear, it's not a comfortable feeling, is that we look for things to bring us certainty. And so for you, and I've done this myself, you will look in the rearview mirror and want to get back to that version of you, because going back in your mind and revisiting a time in your life where you were happy, that reminds you of what life could be, brings you a sense of certainty. It brings a sense of reassurance. The downside about doing this is that it creates a sense of longing And it creates this belief that I'm never going to get back there. And you won't, by the way, because that version of you before your ex was the prior you that needed to be, that needed to happen, that needed to be alive. The version of you that's sitting here now isn't less of a version than the version of you before your ex. In fact, the version of you sitting here now is more, much, 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 much more than who you were before you met your ex. But the problem that is preventing you from seeing that is, number one, likely living in trauma responses that you haven't learned how to overcome yet and make different choices and different beliefs and different behavior patterns in your life and in your relationships yet. And when you look in the rearview mirror, you're not in the present moment. You're looking in the past. And when you're looking in the past and it creates this kind of like dull sense of melancholy and this sense of longing, you're never truly happy. And fundamentally, like I said before, we look in the rearview mirror and romanticize the past because it gives us a sense of certainty. And for a moment, it reminds us of who we are, but it's a temporary fix. It doesn't last. It's like a drug, a smoker. I'm going to light up the cigarette because I'm stressed right now, and smoking the cigarette is going to give me a temporary sense of relief. But the fact that that person is smoking to begin with is a destructive habit. So the myth that I want to bust is that if you're asking, how can I get back to the old me? That's a destructive habit. And it's that question, that very question and line of thinking and feeling that you may be doing. That is the root reason behind why you've done everything right, and yet you still feel stuck, because still, and this is a human condition, you are likely still feeling uncertain about your future. And when we feel uncertain about things, we avoid that because we avoid pain and seek pleasure as human beings. So nostalgia and who you used to be and who you were when you were 30 or 25, like that feels a lot better than looking in the mirror and sitting with some uncomfortable feelings and fear around your future and feel the discomfort of uncertainty. But it's that pattern, that very pattern of looking in the rearview mirror that keeps you stuck. And by the way, this can also show up if you do go to therapy. And I've worked with therapy is great. I'm not knocking therapy. It helped me in many, many ways, but it wasn't the whole thing that I needed personally. And I found that with my clients who experience a pattern of unfulfilling relationships, it's often not the entire thing that they need either. So you can also get stuck in a pattern of romanticizing the past or talking about the past in therapy. And I've talked a lot about this at length on other videos around that pattern of talking about the past and how that doesn't heal wired responses in your nervous system that cause you to get into unfulfilling relationships. But so nostalgia feels safer and more secure than sitting with the uncertainty of a future that you haven't created yet. And the second myth that I want to bust is that the old version of you wasn't better than the version of you that's sitting here today. The old version of you was likely a lot more naive. She got into a toxic marriage or a toxic relationship or several toxic relationships or with partners. More now. The problem with that is that you probably don't trust that yet. You don't trust yourself that you have the experience and the intuitive development and the heart to be able to try again or trust yourself again. So the version of you that's here now isn't less than the version of you. The version of you back then isn't better. The version of you today is better. And the thing that we need to reconcile is, how can you believe that? So the way forward in eliminating a feeling of stuckness is to first heal any lingering trauma responses. And this is a broad topic. So trauma responses that you could be inadvertently employing in your life after an abusive marriage or an abusive relationship could be things like overworking in your career, being a yes woman, having a lack of boundaries with your kids, with your ex, with your co-parenting relationship. You may be avoiding dating out of fear because you don't know how to trust if that's a red flag or if that's just you overreacting. You may be avoiding dating because you've made a meaning that men over 50 haven't done any work on themselves. You may be avoiding dating because you have a belief or you've written a meaning that there are not any good men in the town that you live in. So these are all methods of self-preservation. Self-preservation keeps you safe. The downside, just like looking in the rearview mirror, is a form of self-preservation. But the downside with self-preservation is that it keeps you stuck in a box. So the only way out of a problem is, the old adage is, going through it. You can't stop halfway through. And if you are months or years out of a narcissistic relationship and feeling stuck, it's likely that you have been using, not that you don't want to be unstuck, but the ways that you are going about that are actually keeping you more stuck. So overworking, staying chronically busy, avoiding uncomfortable conversations, avoiding dating. That's an area of discomfort in your life that you don't trust yourself likely. So I'm just going to avoid that. Avoiding things that are going to create discomfort, but that are also going to lead to massive growth and transformation. So first way is learning to heal those trauma responses. And the best way, in my opinion, to heal trauma responses is working with your nervous system and your body. Yes, your mind has a lot to do with how you operate in the world, but when we're talking about a woman who has been emotionally manipulated, gaslit, invalidated, that creates patterns in your behavior that cause you to try to seek safety, try to seek approval, try to seek love from other people in unhealthy ways. And so that causes your nervous system to feel pumped up, anxious, chaotic, unsafe, tense, contracted. So the best way to undoing that pattern is starting at the root, which is where many trauma responses are stored as a memorized response in your body or your nervous system. And you feel things in your body. You feel a pit in your stomach when someone says something and it doesn't sit well with you. You feel your throat tightening when you get a text from your ex about your kids. So you feel things. And what happens when you have relationship trauma is that these feelings become automatic. It's like you don't have a lot of control over it. It just happens. So retraining your nervous system on how to feel safe with the unknown, how to feel safe going on dates, how to feel safe communicating that you're not comfortable with something that someone said on a date. Learning how to feel safe with that. And that the method that I use here is somatic work. So movement, meditation, breath work, guided body scans, somatic experiencing, releasing feelings that you have shoved down, out of sight, out of mind. So that's the first thing. The second way is once you start rewiring and repatterning how you're thinking and how you're feeling, because these go hand in hand, then learning how to make different choices in other relationship areas of your life, like work, like career, like work and your career, the same thing with your kids. How are you communicating, changing, showing up differently in the co-parenting relationship that you have with your ex, showing up differently with family, showing up differently with friends, especially if you have friends that you have maintained that friendship for a long while, but your gut is sensing that I don't know if this person is a good friend for me any longer because it just doesn't feel aligned for me any longer. What a lot of women will do, especially if they've tolerated mistreatment in other relationships, is they will continue to let that go, keep going. So second phase of this is learning how to show up differently in other relationship areas in your life that maybe aren't so triggering or intense as romantic love. And then once you get your feet wet and more practice in those arenas, then the final stage, it's not really a final stage, but this is how I teach it. The third stage is then showing up differently in dating. And this is often where the rubber meets the road and where most people are triggered the most, because this is the area of their life where they have been hurt the most and they remember that pain from this area the most. But when you start with a system, when you start with yourself first and using a protocol that rewires that trauma response and rewires your behaviors that you've adopted that were born out of that trauma. And you start with yourself first, and then you start showing up differently in other relationship areas of your life that maybe aren't so triggering or aren't so intense as your romantic area. By the time you get to dating, you have a very strong, solid foundation for showing up with more trust in yourself. Are you going to have challenges? Absolutely. When I work with clients and break the cycle, we don't even get to dating until the third month. It's not even the first 60 to 90 days are just about the foundation and creating safety with herself and creating safety in other relationship areas for life. And when you get down to it, everything in your life is a relationship, including with yourself. So the name of the game is creating safety and undoing self-sabotaging behaviors that create more safety in these relationships in your life and with yourself. And then once you get good practice with that, then you have a stronger foundation to show up much differently as the best version of yourself in dating, as the version of you who believes truly that she is the best version and who is more experienced, not this version of you that is sitting here today in the present moment, but looking in the rearview mirror going, how can I get back to that? That pattern right there is one of the very things that is keeping you stuck. So if you resonated with this, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if you are curious about learning more about how you can break your own stuckness cycle after a narcissistic marriage or relationship, and you've done all of the right things, but this is like, there's this pervasive sense of like, I'm still not where I would like to be, then visit the masterclass, go to bethany.dotson.com/masterclass. And I break down the 5 shifts that you can start to implement in your life to begin seeing changes. The 5 shifts that you really need to master, that you really need to work on in order to break this pattern of unfulfilling relationships in your life. If you want to jumpstart that, and you've already seen that, or you've been watching these videos or listening to the podcast, then the next step that I would invite you to take is to book a free breakthrough session. Now, a lot of people say, when I book a free call, this is like, you're going to sell me something. This is going to be like a used car sales call. And I want to speak to that because, first of all, I want to honor that concern that you might have, and I would certainly have the same concern. What I want to highlight here is that the call is for people who have internally flipped a switch. There's something in them that feels ready for change. They feel like they've already decided that they have to make changes, and they want to make changes, and they must make changes. And the call is to help you, number one, have a breakthrough around your own patterns. And most importantly, have a breakthrough around what you really, really want. Most women who feel stuck have a significant lack of clarity on what they really want. And if anything that you walk away from the call, whether we work together or not, is massive clarity on what you really, really want in your life. So, number one qualification, the switch has already been flipped in you that you must change, that you're sick and tired of feeling stuck, that you don't want to get another year into your life, another month into your life, still feeling this way. You realize you're wasting precious time. Second thing is, we're going to give you a breakthrough on that call. And then the final thing about the call is that it is also a call to discover, do we jive? Is there a vibe? Do we like, as millennials say, do we have a vibe together? Is it going to be a good fit for us to help you reach your goals? In any therapeutic or coaching relationship, synergy is the number one indicator whether that person is going to have transformation, see lasting change, and have a positive experience. That said, I want to also highlight that this type of work is not easy. It's not for somebody who's looking for a quick fix or somebody who's wanting an easy way out. It does require that you tolerate discomfort, that you face yourself, that you face the hidden ways that you have blocked yourself from healthy relationships. Not that that's your fault, but we learn things from childhood, from past relationship conditioning, and we adopt behaviors that are trying to keep us safe, but in reality are keeping us separate, unsafe, and recreating more of the same stuff that we don't want. So the people who are best for a breakthrough session have been out of the relationship for a while, months, years. Great. You've already had therapy. Maybe you've already done EMDR as well. Maybe you've been dating, but you're still meeting all the wrong people. You've focused on your career. You focused on your kids. Like, check the boxes on what you're supposed to be doing, and you still feel stuck. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that, again, going back to that inner switch, the switch somewhere in you. You might be scared. You might be scared of change. That's normal. Fear is normal. Fear of change is normal. But there's a bigger part of you in there that knows that if you don't make a change, you're going to really regret it. Or it's kind of like this feeling of, I have to do something differently. Those are the three main requirements that yield a beautiful recipe for success and transformation. And the only way that we'll be able to know for sure if we can help is by having an actual conversation and seeing where you are in your journey and getting you clear on what you want, helping you gain clarity on what you really, really, really want. So if you would like to book a free breakthrough session, go to BethanyDotson.com/talk, especially if you resonate with this video and you are tired of being here and now, but you're not really present at all. You feel like you're missing out on life. You feel like you're stuck and you keep kind of going back to that question, how can I get back to the way that I was? Have a beautiful Wednesday, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.